Happy holidays, everybody, and Tony here with my part look back and part 7 ways I would improve Power Rangers Turbo's Wait and See, which aired on Fox Kids on May 12, 1997. This was directed by Paul Schreer, who was also very well known as Bulk in the Power Rangers franchise, and was written by Peter Elwell. Out of all the Power Rangers seasons from the Saban era, Power Rangers Turbo seems to receive the worst rap, mostly because it felt like it was Power Rangers running on autopilot, as well as the fact that there were some choices being made that didn't really resonate with a lot of viewers. Personally, I did not mind Justin Stewart being the new Blue Ranger. Yes, people would have preferred it if Rocky were the Blue Turbo Ranger, but I could see why there were some people who found issue with having a kid as the Blue Ranger. One, because when you think about the Power Rangers cast, most of them are either older teenagers or straight up teenagers. Therefore, it would have made sense for younger children to look up to these slightly older characters to be their role models. Sometimes having a kid be a Power Ranger would have been awkward for some younger viewers because it's essentially looking up to someone who is still relatively young to be their role model. Although in Justin's defense, he is 12 years old, and a good number of viewers tuning into Power Rangers would have been 7 to 12 years old. So it was kind of fascinating seeing a kid ranger. Also go ask the likes of Go from Dairenja and even Riki from Jorik Sentai Orenja, because those two are also Kid Rangers and not a lot of people seem to bat an eye on it. But having Justin be the youngest Power Ranger thus far may not really be that big of a problem. In my opinion, I still tolerate it, because Justin proves himself to be a resourceful character and does not let his size or age get the better of him. He also proved himself to be a worthy ally to his teammates, and can even help them out in situations with his sharp mind. Not to mention, Blake Foster, much like his older colleague Jason David Frank, has also been practicing martial arts ever since he was a very young boy, and has also grown as a martial artist ever since. But as I stated before, Justin is not the problem with Power Rangers Turbo, far from it. It's essentially the plot's getting a little bit more tired and still feeling like the school setting is still omnipresent in the Power Rangers series, and at times it felt like it was Power Rangers running on autopilot. It didn't help matters that Jason David Frank and Catherine Sutherland wanted out of the Power Rangers for a while, especially where Jason David Frank was concerned. Consider this. He has been playing Tommy for nearly 4 years now, and 4 years does seem like a long time for him. Yes, he's famous in this role, and he would eventually come back to the same role in Forever Red and even Dino Thunder, as well as the two other anniversary specials from Super Mega Force and the Legendary Battle, and Super Ninja Steel in Dimensions in Danger. But I do understand that Jason David Frank just wanted to do a lot more outside his tenure as Tommy Oliver. And while Nakia Burris and Johnny Young Bosch still wanted to stay within the Power Rangers franchise, it was also understandable why Tommy, Adam, Tanya, and Kat were starting to become a little bit more phased out in the Power Rangers series. And that was because the old guard was slowly diverging in favor of the new guard in the second half of Turbo, when TJ, Carlos, Ashley, and Cassie came onto the scene to also fight along Justin, and even the likes of the Blue Centurion and the Phantom Ranger as 6th and 7th Rangers, let alone extra Rangers. So it is understandable why Power Rangers Turbo did seem to have a bad rap when it comes to the Saban era of the Power Rangers series, feeling like the Power Rangers series was running on autopilot with the same school setting, but also feeling like the likes of Tommy, Adam, Tanya, and Kat were phasing out of the Power Rangers series, not helping matters that Jason David Frank wanted to do more things outside being Tommy Oliver, and that for a lot of people, Power Rangers Turbo was what almost killed the Power Rangers series before In Space came into the mix to resurrect it. But with all of my preamble out of the way, let's get into what I thought about Wait and See. I still kind of like it. Granted, it could have used a lot more what could have been given, as I will explain much later, but first some really good points. I do like the bonding between Adam and Justin, especially when they were measuring the tide and even spending some quality time together. Yes, it is scientific business for Justin as usual, given that he's a kid genius, but the bonding that Adam and Justin have, almost like brothers from other mothers, is quite sweet, especially when it came to them looking at the girls at the beach. Their interaction almost reminds me of Bill and Russell from Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, in which Adam is the Bill to Justin's Russell, i.e., Adam being the savvy and collected big brother figure to Justin's smart, very capable, and very savvy younger brother figure. And when it came to the fight choreography with Adam, Justin, and the Piranatrons, I thought that was really well done. And it was clear to see that Johnny Young Bosch and Blake Foster had tons of experience as martial artists. Their fight choreography against the stunt people donning the Piranatron's costumes was extremely well done, as well as fluid, yet also demonstrated power. So there's a lot of pluses I could give to that particular scene, as well as Adam's and Justin's moments of male bonding. And what more can you expect from Power Rangers, especially in its best days? I love the morphed up fight scenes. I also like the concept of the Monster of the Week number, in which he is able to add or subtract, let alone multiply or divide numbers, whether it be weights of various objects or various people, and use them to his advantage. That's pretty clever right there. Although his motive of sinking Angel Grove to the sea by increasing the tide is a little bit on the shaky side, but I will definitely get into what I think he should have done better much later when I state the ways that Wait and See could have been improved. But as for the Ranger fight scenes between them and Numbor, I thought it was absolutely fun. And what more can you expect from Ranger fight scenes when the torpedoes are fired, although the torpedoes do look a bit aged in terms of its CGI, means that Numbor can grow in size and the Rangers have to call on their Zords, which are car-themed. Not much of a problem there. It's still enjoyable to watch. And any Power Rangers series is at its strongest when it has all these Megazord fight scenes. And the way this was handled was just gloriously done, especially with the gigantic Numbor pulling various objects, trying to make them weapons, as well as Numbor's his weapons. And going to the particular moment that made this particular episode good is just how Kat managed to summon the confidence after being belittled by a fellow ballet colleague of hers, Myrtle, into thinking that she is a bit too chubby for the role of Clara, let alone having to do anything with ballet. When she finally starts believing in herself and has the confidence to not only fight against the monster of the week, but also conquer her fears and make sure that she gives a laudable performance as Clara in the Nutcracker, does she manage to go all in and totally wail it on Numbor, both in his normal form as well as deliver the final blow in their Megazord form as well as in Numbor's gigantic form. And Kat really summoning the courage to just defeat Numbor and really wail it on him makes her shine in my eyes. And say what you will about Demetria, I do enjoy the concept of Demetria using riddles and questions and even challenging the Rangers to make sure that they formulate the answers for themselves. She really does go out of her way to state that what the Rangers do have in themselves is something that they can challenge themselves with to grow, and it's also a precursor to what the future Power Rangers series was going to be. And Space didn't have a mentor figure as Zordon was captured, and we all know what happened to him after in space. The likes of Lost Galaxy and Time Force didn't really have mentor figures, although you could count Commander Stanton and Captain Logan, but they were not really that much of mentor figures to the main cast. But that's a whole nother discussion. Demetria using riddles and questions to challenge the Rangers rather than spoon-feeding answers is what also makes her a pretty underrated mentor figure. And I thought that her presence was quite welcome. So those were aspects about Wait and See that I enjoyed, but what about aspects about Wait and See that I would love to see more improved? Well, I'll gladly talk about them right now, starting with having more cohesion to the ballet rehearsal plot with Numbor. Yes, it all starts with Kat's, Myrtle's, and their ballet colleagues' audition for the Nutcracker, and the seeds of Kat's doubt as to how she's going to perform was planted by none other than Myrtle's passive-aggressive remarks about her weight and about how she looks. And it's no surprise that ballet, once you get to the nitty-gritty of this art form, is not only very competitive, but it also relies on grace, agility, and also trying to look a certain way for a certain role. And if you even get to the darker side of what ballet entails, it involves a fair amount of eating disorders and just trying to make sure that dancers end up at a certain weight, even though it's not really beneficial for them. And if you remember testimonies by the likes of Gelsey Kirkland, you'll understand what it's like to even be a ballerina or even a danseur under these physical circumstances. So with the not so pretty sides of ballet being brought into the mix, this would have also given Numbor more of an impetus to play into Kat's insecurities about her weight and about how she performs the role of Clara. He would have easily manipulated her into thinking that she needs to get thinner, that she needs to trim a lot more fat, and even play into Myrtle's whole passive-aggressive remarks as to how she looks. That right there is a recipe for a much better episode focused on Kat's body image issues, as well as the demands that she has to perpetuate as a ballerina. And since we're also talking about the Nutcracker, instead of just having Adam and Justin take part in trying to measure the tide, let alone having Tommy and Tanya being Kat's support system, why not have all the Rangers take part in this ballet production? Not necessarily as dancers, oh no, but as the crew. You could have had Tommy and Adam be stagehands. You could have had Justin be the props manager. You could have had Tanya be the costumes manager. And even though he's not a ranger, you could have had Lieutenant Stone be the ticket usher. You could have had everybody involved be part of this particular production of the Nutcracker. Therefore, that would have added to the cohesion of this entire story and would have also given importance to how Kat was going to fare as Clara and how she was going to overcome the challenges that she has in rehearsals and how she was going to deal with this entire weight on her shoulders, as well as trying to make sure that she gives the best performance of her life. And it would have been great to have Kat with this stronger support system, with Adam and Tommy as the stagehands, Justin as the props manager, and Tanya as the costume manager, to make sure that rehearsals run smoothly. I don't really know why it wasn't that important in the grand scheme of things, but I understand why. Kat's rehearsals for the Nutcracker production was mostly treated as an afterthought. And it also felt like the writers were just adding everything in too quickly rather than giving them much thought, let alone being explicit with what they should have done in the first place. My proposal of having Tommy, Adam, Justin, and Tanya be involved as the crew members and having Lieutenant Stone involved as the ticket usher would have made more sense, especially for Kat, given the preparations that she and her ballet colleagues have for the Nutcracker production, as well as what Madame Dubois' expectations are for all of her students who are destined to make really good performances, let alone great performances for an entire audience. And I know this next point seems innocuous, but please go easy on the slapstick. It did feel rather out of place to have Bulk and Skull as chimps, which I really don't blame Diva Talks for getting so pissed as to why they ended up being monkeys in the first place. And even that sort of out of place moment with Lieutenant Stone having water sprayed at him and tripping all over a bunch of plates and having all these sacks of plates fall on him, that felt rather out of place. So just trim the fat out of that slapstick moment and just get to the meat of the entire story. Speaking of the meat of the entire story, especially where Kat's problems of eating habits and body image is concerned, we could have had more scenes of Kat's challenges with herself in rehearsals, and we could have had a little bit more concern from Madame Dubois' part to see how Kat was faring and how she is coping with the pressures of Clara. And we could have also seen Kat faint due to the lack of food in her body, as well as not eating enough in her occupation as a dancer. After all, Madame Dubois did see the best in Kat in terms of how she acquired the role of Clara. Kat imbued that ingenue sweet quality that made her a credible Clara. And to see Kat going through moments of fainting because she didn't have enough nutrients and minerals in her system because of the lack of food would have been extremely concerning for Madame Dubois. And it would have given the impetus for Madame Dubois to finally give Kat a pep talk that if she continues to keep starving herself, she'll not only perform badly, but also give in to illness, let alone collapse, let alone death in the worst possible scenario. So having all of these challenges that Kat has to endure in rehearsals would have made this particular episode a lot more not only watchable, but also credible in terms of how Kat's tenure as a dancer has been faring. And since we're also talking about Kat's tenure as a ballerina, let's also address Myrtle, played by Christina Anapau. I do think that Christina Anapau is a rather underrated actress, and her tenure as Myrtle definitely shows the type of character that she can portray. She does do a good job playing this bitch of a diva, and that same bitchiness was also evident in her portrayal as Cassidy Murtoy from Cruel Intentions 3 7 years later. And it's also pretty clear to see that Christina Anapau is a trained ballerina. Out of all of her ballet colleagues, including Kat, she's the only one who seems to be dancing on point. And her experience as a ballerina is explicit right there. I understand that Myrtle is the prima donna ballerina. She seems to be the performer with a lot of capital given the number of roles that she does, i.e., leading lady roles. And she's not going to let anybody trample on her spotlight. And it's really simple to see why Madame Dubois would be quick to shoo her off, because she does not like her attitude. She feels like her attitude is rotten, which Myrtle explicitly demonstrates to Kat in terms of how acidic she was toward her, as well as her passive-aggressive remarks not only about her weight, but of course about what she sees herself as, the star, although her ego is extremely bloated. And all we see in Myrtle is just this bitchy, passive-aggressive diva who wants it all, but gets easily jealous that Kat got the role of Clara, simply because, as I stated before, Kat imbued ingenue innocence and a sweetness that was absolutely appropriate for Clara, as opposed to Myrtle's more diva-ish and sharp way of being this prima ballerina that would have made her a little bit more ideal for Odile, or the Black Swan from Swan Lake. And as for Myrtle, we don't really get to understand why on earth she is so mean and so acidic, let alone acerbic, towards Kat receiving the role of Clara. Why does she seem to have a big fat chip on her shoulder? We don't know. All she was just nothing more than this bitchy diva who thinks that she's above every single one of her colleagues, and that's it. She's not like Shauna, who was jealous of Kimberly, because Shauna had a much stronger backstory in which she was Aisha's best friend during her Stone Canyon years, but when Aisha moved to Angel Grove High, she felt like her friendship with her was slowly becoming more non existent. And when Shauna started to get to know Kimberly a lot better, she started to have a change of heart and therefore became good friends with Kimberly and even started to root for her. What do we get from Myrtle? We didn't really get anything that would have made Myrtle a more complete character. We could have gotten a motivation as to why Myrtle would be so bitchy toward Kat. Is she doing this under pressure? Is she doing this because she feels like she is the veteran and she feels like she has to be this diva to preserve her status? Did she have a few good friends who walked out on her and then she became this bitter, jaded person? We don't know all that. It would have helped matters if Myrtle became a more fully fleshed out character. Maybe she could have started off as someone who was bitter, bitchy, and mean, but when she saw Kat faint and realized that her words had consequences and her actions toward her also had consequences, she would have started to have a change of heart and realize that being passive aggressive toward her colleagues is not the way to be a good sport. She could have owned up to her passive aggressive remarks and could have been a much more fleshed out character. And I'm also sure that if she had a little bit more humanity in her and was also given the Shauna treatment in which she did start off as bitter but started to understand Kimberly a lot more, Myrtle could have had the same way toward Kat, in which she now understands why Kat had the role of Clara in the first place. And it's not because of how she looked, but because she worked hard for it. And that would have been a very humbling experience for Myrtle, not just having her being relegated to playing the Mouse Queen in the same production of the Nutcracker. With Myrtle being a more fleshed out character than her initial bitchy diva ways, she could have been more interesting and less one note. At least I could still give credit to Christina Anapau for not only her really great acting skills bringing this bitchy diva to life, but also taking advantage of her ballet expertise and using it to her advantage. So while Myrtle could have been a better character, at least it was still great to see Christina Anapau give the goods not only as a dancer, but also as an actress. This also leads me to argue that Kat's eating disorders of either anorexia or body dysmorphia should have been more clearly defined, because as it was really unclear to see if Kat's eating disorder was just the result of some passive aggressive remark, but it could have been also the result of her feeling like she's not as good enough than her colleagues, let alone against Myrtle. And it could have also played with her own insecurities of how she was going to fare as Clara. Even people suffering from eating disorders would explicitly tell anybody that it's not as easy as just simply believing in themselves. They need to have dogged persistence and a strong support system to make sure that they don't fall into any more relapses, let alone find themselves in a morass of despair, let alone self-destruction. As eating disorders are a lot more complex and subtle and even more secretive than they usually are, it would have been interesting to see Kat deal with those issues rather than just jump from plot point to plot point, because that would have also been daring for a Power Rangers season, let alone a Power Rangers episode, to deal with the character going through her moments of trying to find her way through this particular problem. And it's certainly not going to be an easy road, especially when she acknowledges that she does have an eating disorder. Furthermore, the support of her friends may not always be enough, but she'll also have to have dogged persistence, as well as having people who care for her constantly encourage her that she is good the way she is, and that she has the heart and the dedication to make it as a really fine ballerina. She doesn't need to be defined by all of this under-eating, let alone all of this madness that she would have gotten herself into. And it's not always enough for Kat to finally find out that it's all within herself, that she has to believe in herself, that she is more than just her weight, more than just how she looks, to finally triumph over Numbor. That's fine and dandy, but it would have been more beneficial if the episode dealt with the subtleties and the complexities of what it's like to have an eating disorder, especially when you're still in your formative years. That would have been more nuanced. And while it would have been more of a challenge for the writers, I'm pretty sure that the intentions would have been just as interesting for young viewers to check out, especially since a good chunk of viewers who caught Power Rangers were teenagers. Teenagers who were still finding themselves with their body image and what to do with it, and especially to live the healthiest way possible and even maintain a healthy body image for themselves. Therefore, there should have been a lot more emphasis on Kat's struggles with not only body dysmorphia, but also whatever eating disorder she has. And this leads me to the final point I want to make, and that is having Numbor directly target Kat. And just forget about the whole Tide scheme. And this not only pertains to Numbor, but also DevinatArt. Understand this, DevinatArt is essentially a much older figure than Kat. Whereas Kat is innocent, sweet, and absolutely lovely, DevinatArt is abrasive, mean, and really pushy. So it does make sense that there is this evil queen and innocent princess dichotomy. Why not have DevinatArt project her own feelings of feeling ugly and her own feelings of feeling inferior in terms of her looks toward Kat? And she could have also played into Kat's own insecurities about how she looks as a ballerina and how she's gonna perform as Clara from the Nutcracker. That would have been just as strong. Sure, Tommy, Adam, Justin, and Tanya would be that safety net that Kat needs to assure her that she is good the way that she is, but that gnawing doubt is something that not even they can trivialize or even conquer in just one pep talk. And it's something that not even Madame Dubois could conquer with her own pep talk. Because I'm pretty sure that Madame Dubois has seen her fair share of young girls who have given into eating disorders, all for the sake of trying to dance beautifully and gracefully. And I'm pretty sure that she's also seen her fair share of young girls who have been hospitalized because of their eating disorders and because of their low self-esteem for feeling like they're not thin enough to do all of these crazily agile moves in ballet. That would have been a trigger point for Kat, especially for both DevinatArt and Numbor, to play into her insecurities, to further plant those seeds of doubt and self-loathing about how she looks and feels, until she finally summons the strength within herself and through the good network that she has with her friends that she can overcome this and that she can make it her destiny to be the best person that she can be. And I'm sure that Numbor is certainly going to give her a migraine with all of the numbers that she has to deal with, from calorie counting to her weight to everything going on in Kat's mind as a dancer. Even DevinatArt would find herself gloating about how much she's gonna let Kat just sink and plummet with her weight. DevinatArt and Numbor explicitly targeting Kat and her own issues with self-esteem, her own issues with her body image, her own issues with eating habits and diet, and everything that she has to accomplish as a ballerina would have been a much stronger motivation for both DevinatArt and Numbor to make the Power Rangers break on the inside. That would have been just as great for Kat to show that the person that she was fighting with is not against DevinatArt, let alone Numbor, but herself. And she would have had the power to overcome all of these issues with herself, all thanks to the friends that she has, and all thanks to the encouragement she has in someone who believes in her, i.e., Tommy, Adam, Justin, Tanya, and even Madame Dubois, and to some extent, Lieutenant Stone. Heck, it would have been nice to see Lieutenant Stone be the proper authority figure he can be, and even remind Kat that she's got what it takes. She's got guts, and she's got the talent to shine as a fine ballerina. Overall, Wait and See was a decent episode, if not a little bit disjointed with its focus. Yes, it could have been a lot more cohesive and clearer, let alone explicit with its focus on Kat's problems with weight, Kat's problems with eating habits, as well as Kat's problems with her body image as a ballerina. And I would have loved for this episode to commit to it. Heck, it would have been interesting to see this episode be a bit of a holiday episode, considering that this is the Nutcracker that Kat and her ballet colleagues are performing. It would have been just as great to see the rehearsal process of how Kat was faring, not only in terms of her rehearsals, but also with how she was faring in her dancing and the eyebrow-raising concerns that Madame Dubois has on her star pupil. All the solutions that I stated about how Wait and See could have been better would have made this episode stronger. But as it was a decent Power Rangers Turbo episode that I still kind of enjoy, but it could have been way better. And for those of you who caught Power Rangers Turbo's Wait and See, what'd you think of it? Did you feel that the solutions I provided to make Wait and See better are very legitimate and you could have felt like they could have been used in this particular episode? Did you also feel that the issues of Kat's body image, as well as her eating habits and wants to be a lot more wonderful and skilled as a dancer, should have been more explicit? Did you also feel that Myrtle should have had a stronger presence in the show, let alone the episode, as an antagonist, i.e., someone who did have a huge chip on her shoulder, but eventually came to understand Kat more as a person? Did you also feel like there should have been a lot more done with Wait and See? Or did you feel like this episode was fine as it is? Please comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my look back and ways to improve Wait and See from Power Rangers Turbo. Tune in next time for another review, let alone look back, especially for this holiday season. So until then, happy holidays and may the power protect you, everybody.